Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football, presented by John Donovan and Longhorn Wealth Management Group. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined every day by Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, who shaded up this morning.
Had a week off. Texas was not one in the AP poll during the off week. They're back to one now, thanks to Vanderbilt fans and their goalposts floating down a river. I don't know about floating.
Guys, I got to say this now. In the prep for this show this morning, Jerry was not wearing his glasses at all. So when they popped up on the screen as we went live, I have to say that's a funny one, Mr. Hamilton.
It's a great day to have a Goodr read later in this show. It's good for Goodr.
And thank you to Vanderbilt for taking care of business in Nashville. It was a crazy weekend of college football, no doubt about it. Not only did number 1 go down, but number 4 in Northwest Arkansas took an L at the hands of the Razorbacks. Also, you look around, USC goes down. Missouri gets stomped, a mud hole in by the Aggies. I tell you what, big changes at the top of college football's landscape right now. Longhorns, though, unscathed because they did not play. The Longhorns did not play this weekend. So it is, however, OU versus Texas versus OU, and it is game week. Last week was hate week, Jerry. This week is game week.
By the way, I just want to say this because Oklahoma also moved up the polls. And the only way you move up in the polls with an offense that horrific is if a lot of teams lose.
Ooh, talking smack too. I love it.
I mean, it's true, right? This was Oklahoma's best offensive week of the season.
Hey, I've got a question for y'all. And this is something I wrote this morning on Texas football. And I've got several different topics I want to hit on this week. But this one for me is a question for you guys. Is this a referendum? Is this game a referendum on who's doing it right? Sark or Brent Venables at some level? Think about it. Sark's 1-2 against the Sooners, 1-1 against Venables. Yes. 1-1 against Venables, right?
Yes.
I think so. So, who's doing it right is the question. Is it offense focused or is it defense focused? We'll see what comes of this. Texas last year, I thought Venables got the better of Sark early in that game last year and set the tone for it. Obviously, then the Oklahoma offense was a little bit more, I don't know if powerful is the right word, but capable may be the right one to what they did to Texas. I thought Venables got the better of Sark a year ago, Jerry. And let's see what happens this year when Sark has a year to realize what happened in that game and see what the Texas defense actually does against the Oklahoma offense as well.
I think the big thing in that conversation for me is what we talked about all summer. Venables backed himself into the wall at quarterback. Yep. When he let Dylan Gabriel or pushed him out, or however Oklahoma fans want to phrase it, pushed him out to Oregon. I'll go with pushed him out to Oregon. That's what happens when you're not going to give the NIL deal. You're essentially pushing a guy out and telling him move it on. Jackson Arnold had to be a really good player immediately. And that has not happened. So now with the injuries on the wide receiver, and at the lackluster offensive line to this point, see if they get it all fixed in an off week. Mike Hawkins now has and he's a very talented player. I think he's going to be a really good player for Oklahoma, but he has the task of having to deliver in the Cotton Bowl against Texas. If not, Venables is going to take even more heat, especially if Oregon were to beat Ohio State this weekend.
You know what's interesting here, Jerry, is the rushing yards on this stat graphic that we have right now. Who would have thought that Texas would have a running back, given Texas's concern at running back right now, that has more rushing yards to this point in the season than Oklahoma? Certainly not me. Javante Barnes, a young man out of Las Vegas, I believe, is the leading rusher for the Sooners. They have missed their freshman Taylor Tatum. He is a really good player out of Longview. He is expected, we believe, to come back for the Sooners this week, as well as Deion Burks, who has led them in catches. So we'll see what that does for the offense for Oklahoma. But I'm really focused on how the Texas – I think it's the strengths of the two teams, the Texas offense versus the OU defense. And that is the strength of Sark, and that is the strength of Venables, right? Offensive coach, offensive-minded, defensive coach, defensive-minded. Let's see who wins that contest.
I think in this game, one is always turnovers, right? And controlling your emotions. That may be a combination of both. But after that, this is an offensive line game for Texas for me, period. Like in the discussion, that is going to probably determine this game. I've had like 5 games circled for the Texas offensive line to play at that top 3 offensive line in the country level. They did it against Michigan, against still a quality defense and quality players up front. They have to have that type of game against Oklahoma because that would negate Oklahoma's strength. And if you do the same thing against Oklahoma you did against Michigan, then Texas is going to score a lot of points because they have too much speed at wide receiver. And Oklahoma has good players in the secondary, but Gentry Williams has been hurt. The Cheetah's out for the year. I mean, they've sustained some injuries back there too. So I think it's offensive line game for Texas all the way. If the offensive line plays at a really high level, then the Oklahoma defense is going to have issues over the course of a game defending Texas because there's just too much speed.
Matt has a good one here. For Texas to win, it's the opposite. Our defensive secondary and our offensive line, that must be the difference maker. Thanks, Matt. I'm all for being wrong. Here's one thing people don't – as long as Texas wins, I can be wrong all day long, and I'll still have a smile. I think that, this game, though, I've got a feeling that both coaches could be around at their respective schools for a while. That win against Auburn for Brent Venables was huge because it's going to get him back to another bowl game in a year when he's dealing with a true freshman quarterback, Jerry. So I feel like Texas and Sark versus Venables and OU. That's going to be a thing for a while.
Bobby,
people are asking about Derek Williams. I haven't heard how close to 100% he is. Just to be clear on that.
Yeah, I haven't either. We won't get the first, as a reminder, we won't get the first reports until Wednesday night.
But Sark, I'm sure, will be asked about it in his Monday press conference.
Yep. He did not have a Monday press conference last year, Jerry, following a bye week. They have not sent us out any information on it. And so what that means to me, Texas playing possum a little bit with news. That's essentially, and I bet OU does too. I'll just put it that way.
Sorry.
Welcome to OU week where everything is guarded, basically.
Oh, gosh.
Kim is 100% correct. Colt Monroe, get your butt out of class and send that super chat.
No, turn your work in and don't listen to Jerry. That's what you need to be doing.
That's true for any kid, by the way.
Bobby, before we move on, will you let everybody know about John Donovan and Longhorn Wealth Management?
Yeah, absolutely. John's a certified financial planner, has spent more than 30 years providing investment, retirement, insurance, and estate planning services and solutions to Longhorn families and friends across the country. He's also a proud Texas Exes Life member whose wife and 6 siblings are also all UT grads. John looks forward to celebrating the Longhorns' consensus #1 ranking with OTF fans at the Cotton Bowl and by offering a free 90-minute consultation to all OTF fans to explore how Longhorn Wealth can help you maximize your wealth, minimize your taxes, and secure your legacy. Simply call John and his team at Longhorn Wealth 972-707-4900 or go online longhornwealth.net to schedule your free consultation today. I do want to say a little bit here while I've got you on a promo. We are also going to be at the Texas X's golf tournament on Friday morning, and then at the bash before the clash on Friday afternoon. Make sure you check out DallasTexasX's.org for more information on those events. Jerry and I will be out at both of them. Hope to meet some of you guys there. Really enjoy supporting the Texas X's like John does through his Collin County chapter, as well as the Texas X's of Dallas and those guys up there, because they've been great to us here at On Texas Football.
By the way, I just want to say, I think we're about to have the hurricane in the Gulf up to a category 5. I don't think it'll hit as a 5, but people in Florida, man, we're thinking about you on the West Coast now. That's going to be ugly in 2.5 days. Because I know we have people checking in all the time from Sarasota. We've had people in Siesta Key, all around Tampa, everywhere over there, man. Best of luck to you guys on this one. This is going to be bad.
All right. And that we got a comment here, if I can find it, from Kyle. Kyle says, good morning from Northwest Arkansas. It was a crazy weekend up here. And that leads me to our next thing, guys. It was a crazy weekend in college football. Y'all talked about it briefly for a second, but I want to bring up the AP poll because there were a ton of upsets this week. In Texas now, the new number 1, followed by Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Georgia, and then Miami, Alabama, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Clemson rounds out your top 10. But, man, what a difference a week makes. That thing has been flipped on its head.
Well, and Miami's got calls 2 weeks in a row that are questionable nearing the end of the game to keep them. Else they should be down. I mean, they're going to lose. Their defense is atrocious. But it's just – this is why I think college football is in the best place it's ever been. BYU fans are looking at their schedule saying, can we really do this? Can we get into the playoff? Rhett Lashley and the SMU fan base is looking at it saying, this just got interesting. Pittsburgh fans are like, we're literally undefeated. I don't know how we lose our best players to the portal every year. And they're looking at their schedule. Indiana fans have never had a reason to care, ever. In football, realistically. Even Leaf Corso would tell you that. Now, they're staring at it and say, well, hold on. If we navigate 10-2, are we going to be in the playoff here? That's how wild college football is and why it's in the best place it's ever been. Think about if we had a 16-team playoff right now, which we will in the future. Think about this as a 16-team playoff. Just great. College football's in a great place, not without issues, but in a great place. And I think home field advantage matters more than ever because of parity. I think it's a greater advantage because of the parity in college football now.
I would just say focusing on the top 10 there. Clemson is edging into that. And I think they probably deserve to be in there over a Miami team that is undefeated at this point. You just won't see them up there at this level. If Texas takes care of business, okay, this weekend, it will be game day in Austin, I'm pretty sure. And it should be because it will be 1 versus 5 or 1 versus 4 if both teams are victorious this weekend. So a lot riding on this for the Longhorns this weekend. I don't want to look too far ahead, though, because Texas versus OU, you can't look ahead.
Bring that back up real quick.
Yeah.
And then you can bring up how much of a favorite Texas is over Oklahoma on ESPN. But obviously, Ohio State and Oregon play this week. Somebody's going to drop down. Oregon at home game. Penn State gets Ohio State in a few weeks there. Georgia, of all these teams in the top 5, Georgia still has the toughest schedule left because they go to Texas, to Ole Miss, and have Tennessee at home. Miami, a joke of a defense. They probably won't last. Clemson should be ranked ahead of Miami, but they have a loss. Alabama, we'll see. Tennessee, Nico's not playing like a top 10 level team quarterback. That's their issue right now. The return of Matt Campbell. Golly, man. He's an upset away from being in the top 10. That's crazy to think about.
Good. He's a good coach, man.
Great coach.
Little on the side in fighting for his players, but a good coach.
A lot of Ashton Jainty comments. I think he's probably the leader for the Heisman if they keep winning right now. But we'll see what happens with Travis Hunter. Cam Ward if they keep getting calls, but he turns it over. I mean, he had a pick six again. He turns it over at probably too high of a rate. If it costs him a game, he will not win the Heisman because of the way those turnovers go for him. But see if Quinn puts up a couple of big games back to back. There's a possibility Quinn could leap right back into the top 5 here.
He needs to. I mean, I agree with that. I mean, he was the leading Heisman candidate when he went out with an injury. I mean, you can't sleep on Quinn Ewers right now. I think Janty, though, has put up such a big – I mean, he's a great kid to watch too, Jerry. I mean, I told y'all he reminded me a little bit of Marshall Faulk.
Yeah.
And LaDainian Tomlinson. When you put those two guys together, those are special players.
Yeah.
That's who that kid reminds me of.
Really talented. No doubt. Lee Chadwell says, I think Boise should have left him in the pad of stats. They so that actually hurt JT Saturday because he had 13 from 186 in the first half. He didn't carry it again because they were up. They had 49 points at halftime. So statistically, he may be hurt by blowout games. That'll be something interesting to follow. But he needs a couple, 3 more 250 type yard games playing at Boise, I think, to really get over the line in the Heisman.
He's going to get him. As long as he stays healthy, that cat's going to get him.
As long as they don't blow everybody out, right? That's the problem.
He's really, really talented, Jerry. Really, really talented. As talented a running back as we've seen since Bijan, probably.
Yep.
And maybe more of a true running back. Bijan's such a good pass catcher. This guy's more of a true running back, prototypical type, if that makes sense.
He is.
Jerry, as you said, talking a little bit more about Texas OU, the graphic that we put up a minute ago with all the information.
Bobby won't like this graphic. Bobby, don't put your Goodrs on.
Says that Texas obviously is a 14-point favorite. But here's something else I wanted to add in. ESPN Analytics, Bobby. Ooh. Texas, 85.1% chance to win this game. That's why Jerry's putting his Goodrs on.
Bobby, you don't like that. This is Bobby's least favorite ever he's ever seen right here.
Rat poison. Don't bite the cheese. It is rat poison. This game is always 50-50, period, end of story.
Too bad that's not going to be the fan turn.
Hey, Brian Robison's going to be on here in a little bit. He's going to come talk a little Longhorn football this morning with us. He'll tell you not to take the cheese either. We can talk matchup predictor and lines and all that stuff all you want. I've said it since the dawn of time. Throw the records out the window. Throw the personnel out the window. This game is guts and determination and execution. Who's going to execute the best, play the hardest, tackle the best? I mean, simple football in this game.
NF says ESPN correctly predicted OU winning last year when everybody thought it'd be Texas. So there is that. But too bad that's not going to be the fan base turnout Saturday.
Oh, yeah. That may be the Texas Vanderbilt fan turnout, though.
But this could be by the fourth quarter if things go Texas way.
I'd have no problem with that. I like that site. I've been there before when that's happened. That's always a fun thing when OU fans leave to go to the fair at halftime.
Hey, while we're waiting on Brian, there was actually a really interesting recruiting question. King Me asks, looking at recruiting race, do you think top 32 should be 5-star? And of those 32, should the top 10 be 6 stars? I'm a person that does not buy into the have to have 32 5-stars in every class. I know why people do it because you want to tie high school to college to the NFL for companies and marketing and all that. But I do not think every class has 32 5-stars. I'm not doing this as long as I have no how. That means guys get ranked from 20, a lot of times from 26 to 32. And those rankings say they're a 5-star, but they probably weren't really a 5-star prospect. And that's where the issue becomes when those kids get to college and people say, whoa, this guy was ranked a 5-star, only because they pressed the issue, not because he really was.
All right, it looks like our special guest is here. So, Bobby, I'm going to let you introduce him while I bring him in.
Yeah, big man Brian Robison is here with us. How you doing, Brian?
I'm good. Still haven't earned my 5 stars, so we're all good.
You did. Oh, yeah. You are how much? Dude, I don't even want to. I'm going to have to go fact check you and see how much money you made even if you didn't get your 5 stars in the NFL over the years.
Don't believe everything you see.
Hey, Brian, Blake, please put that prediction thing back up. I want to ask Brian's take on this. Brian, this is the ESPN matchup predictor. Okay, they're saying 85% chance Texas wins this game. Is this just straight on rat poison? Has there ever been a Texas OU game where there was an 85% chance one team would win one way or the other going into it? Maybe except for 05 when y'all knew you were going to beat the you-know-what out of them.
Well, I mean, let's just say this. What was the predictor for Alabama Vanderbilt? You know, what was the predictor for Tennessee Arkansas? The thing that these are cool to see, from the beginning of games. I think it's always kind of cool to see how the computer models and everything generate, what they expect to happen. But man, listen, this is the game of football. It starts 0-0 for a reason. That's because on any given day, anybody's got a chance. If you play football the way you're supposed to play football, you've got a chance to win the ball game. And so it really comes down to who's going to show up that day. But for a rivalry game with the atmosphere like the Red River Rivalry, it is hard to say anybody's got an 85% chance to win.
Hey, Brian, by the way, Brian, I just got to say this. You were 7-star. You have a 7-star by your name on Discus, okay, in a high school. That will forever stand. By the way, we've created that right now. But I wanted to ask you this. Before the game's even played, what's the most important part of this for you, having played in it?
Yeah, I think the most important is keeping your emotions in check. This is one of those games that you can definitely get overhyped. And if you don't understand what you're going into, that's where you got to lean on some of the veteran guys that have been in there and get these young guys to understand what they need to expect going into this game in Dallas, because it is a different atmosphere than you've ever played in. It is, you're going to come out of the tunnel and people are going to be booing you and, spitting at you and cussing at you. And then next thing you know, you hit the 50 and it's like you're back home at DKR. So it's just a different atmosphere. And I think that's the biggest thing is understanding that going into the game, you got to keep your emotions in check, because you're going to be playing against a lot of guys that you've played against in high school or guys that have Texas roots, and it means a little bit more to them as well. So there's a lot of emotions and things that go into this game, but you got to keep them in check, because the team that has the less foolish penalties, that doesn't, let the emotions get the best of them, doesn't, get too amped and everything like that, where you start creating turnovers and pressing the issue and stuff like that. That team that eliminates that or keeps it at a minimum is normally the team that wins the ball game.
That's a great way to put it, man, because I think for years we've looked at, who leads in rushing? Rushing would be the one that people say, whoever leads this game in rushing is the ultimate winner of this contest. I'm not so sure that's indicative anymore of what the reality of football as a whole is, given people now in the pros completing 80% per game. My thought on this, and I think back when you said foolish penalties, I thought about an offsides that cost Texas one time in a big game at OU. I think about maybe a situation where OU didn't need to interfere with a passer, but they did. I agree with that, and turnovers obviously has always been a big part of it. Brian, my question to you is, when you look at this Texas team, and I talked a little bit about it earlier, is this at some level a referendum game for Sark and Brent Venables, in which direction they have this program going? Because Sark is known as an offensive mastermind. Venables has this kind of aura around him about his defense and what he did either at Oklahoma or at Clemson. Is this a little bit of referendum on the two coaches?
I think it is, and I think it has been for the last few years. There's such young coaches at their programs. When you look at it, Stark's only been here for 3 years now, and Venables is kind of in that same mode. So they're still being evaluated by everybody. Like, are we going in the right direction? Which I think most people at Texas will agree that Stark has taken this team in the right direction. I think most people at Oklahoma will probably say that we feel like we're going in the right direction, but there's still question marks. And what I mean is we've always looked at Oklahoma as an offensive rounded team, right? Now, granted, they've dealt with a plethora of injuries this year, so their offense hasn't really been at 100% capacity, right? But really and truly, when you look at Oklahoma, their defense has been pretty oppressive this year. You know, when you look at it, they've got a rusher, number 32, I forget his name, but number 32 can really rush the passer. Like Texas is going to have to, you know, Kelvin Banks and some of those guys are going to have to understand that that's a guy they're going to have to take care of. Stutzman in the middle, he's a guy that can make plays from sideline to sideline. They got DBs that will come down and hit you. You watch that Tennessee game, and it was a very physical game from the start. And I think a lot of people thought that Tennessee was going to be a team that could out-physical them and wear them down, and it just really didn't happen. So when I look at that, Venables has installed his idea and his mindset of what he wants his defense to look like with an OU defense, which is not what we're accustomed to. And so when I look at this, I think it's just going to come down to who wants it more. And that's the biggest deal in these games. When it's a rivalry game like that, it's always going to come down to who wants it more, especially when you have two programs like them. So going back to what your question was, I think it's going to be up to Sarkisian and Venables both to make sure that throughout this week, they have their team mindset ready to go, that they are truly in tune with what they need to do and not worrying about the other side. They've got to concentrate what's going on in their locker rooms and their playbooks with their teammates and not listen to any of the outside noise, because if you can get caught up in that in a game this week, because that will be a lot of the talk with the national media leading up to that. And if you get caught up into it and you start kind of, as Coach Matt Brown would say, eating your own cheese, rat poison, right? It'll come back to catch you on Saturday.
Hey, Brian, I wanted to ask you, Michael Hawkins is going to be the best quarterback Texas faced, even though he's young, true freshman. Texas hasn't faced a high-level quarterback this year. And I'm not saying Michael Hawkins is that, but I'm saying he's the best Texas has faced this year. And he's just a natural playmaker with his feet and his athletic ability. How do you think is the best way to go about defensing a guy like that, especially considering he's young, though, and Oklahoma's receiver core is pretty banged up?
Well, and I think, you know, here's the deal. I think he does a lot of great things. When you watch him and you watch the way he came in that Tennessee game and the things he was able to do late in the game, it was one of those moments where, as a Texas fan, you're looking at it and you're like, oh, where'd this guy come from? You know? And then you start seeing him progress. You know, he's still young. I think there's still some stuff that he's going to grow from. Obviously, I mean, every quarterback's like that when they first get their opportunity. But I think the thing about him is Texas has to keep doing what they've done for the most part, which is be very disciplined in what they do. I think the one thing you can say about our pass rush, even though they weren't getting as many sacks in the very beginning, was they were rushing very disciplined. They weren't getting out of their lanes. They were collapsing the pocket on quarterbacks, and they were causing the quarterbacks to make tough decisions, even though they were not as mobile as maybe a Michael Hawkins, but they were causing them to make bad decisions with the ball. And that's what you're going to have to do with Michael Hawkins. Do not let him sit there and run around. And I don't know if you want to necessarily go into the game spying him with a guy like Anthony Hill or something like that, or if you want to tell your guys, hey, we're going to start this game, we're going to trust you guys up front to get the job done, which means you got to keep him in the pocket. You got to collapse the pocket onto him and force him to make some bad decisions, and we'll let everybody else rally to him, right? So that, I think, is probably the winning formula. Can you do that against a guy like Michael Hawkins? I don't know. I think you're going to probably have some blitzes that are going to be thrown at him. You're going to bring some 5- and 6-man blitzes at him. And there maybe even be some opportunities where you may throw an Anthony Hill out there and say, hey, you've got to spy on this guy. Or maybe you throw Colin Simmons out there and just say, hey, you're going to spy him and we're going to rush 4 other guys. You know, that's the beauty of having a guy like Colin Simmons that has the speed that he has. You can do a lot of different things from his aspect. But do you really want to take a guy with his get off and pull him off the line? So there's a lot of decisions that need to be made when you're facing a guy like this, is the point I'm getting at.
Hey, you made a comment there that you said Texas's defensive line was disciplined. Is that, I agree with you. Like they have not gotten out of their rush lanes very often this year. Is that something that you notice as a former player when you evaluate a team and how they rush the passer? Is like, look, don't give big gaps. to people. And I agree with you. I feel like Texas has done a reasonably good job. The only touchdown they gave up to Mississippi State was when they did give up that quarterback scramble of sorts, when Anthony Hill kind of vacated his gap. Is that something you look at really closely, Brian, when you're watching a game?
Absolutely. It's probably the first thing that I notice about guys that are rushing is, are they staying disciplined? What I mean by that is, as a defensive end, you got to understand who you're rushing against. As a defensive tackle, you got to understand who you're rushing against. And I'll give you a prime example. You rush a guy like Aaron Rodgers, for example, that he may not necessarily be running around to scramble, but he runs around to make plays. And if you let him do that, he can make a big play and kill you. And so when we would always rush Aaron or Russell Wilson or some of those guys, as a defensive end, you had to understand that I could not take an inside move too early, but I also couldn't rush too high. So there's a lot of dirty work that needs to be done. You may have to power down on a guy and just drive him in the back of the pocket and fall off inside late or something like that. But then you go to the inside guys. Like normally you have an A-gap rusher, you have a B-gap rusher, right? But as your A-gap rusher, you have to understand that the open B-gap is next to you. And the defensive end has to understand that too. Where is his opening at? And I think that's what Texas is going to have to understand this week is watching film. Where does Michael Hawkins like to escape? Is it the B-gap? Is it outside? Is it to his right? Is it to his left? All right. Those guys are going to have to understand that. And what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to be mindful and aware of when they rush and they power down and the pocket begins to collapse. Where's the place that he feels most comfortable trying to escape? That is also going to be opportunity where you have the most opportunities to make the sack. Because if you're a left end, for example, you got a nose next to you and he wants to escape that B gap, you got to understand, hey, if I just power this guy to his upfield shoulder, I can fall back late and I can make the sack. Right. So understanding those things is what I've seen out of this Texas defense. And it hadn't been like that for a few years. I think last year they got, exponentially better from the year before. But then I think this year, I just haven't seen a lot of times where I was like, man, he's got to rush better than that or something. I've just seen, very good, clean rushes out of this group.
Hey, Brian, do you think Oklahoma attacks Colin Simmons in that way when he's in the game? Because that's it. Like, Barron Sorrell's going to be extremely disciplined. But Colin Simmons can get upfield so fast. Do you just kind of at times let him get upfield fast and play right underneath him?
If you got a guy that can do it, I mean, the problem is he's getting off the ball so fast that do you really have an offensive? Yeah. I mean, do you really have an offensive? I mean, ideally, if I had a guy like, let's just say a guy like Trent Williams that played at Oklahoma, if I had a guy like Trent Williams that had long arms and had really good feet, I'd say, hey, let him beat you off the ball and then just drive him past the quarterback, right? That would be very ideal. I don't know if Oklahoma has that guy because, and I'm not saying that because they don't have good offensive linemen. I'm saying that's like trying to tell somebody do that against Von Miller.
Right.
It's just like good luck, right? He may be past you before you can get that hand on him. So it may be something that they look at, but I don't think it's something that they should feel very comfortable with.
Good stuff. Blake, you had something from one of the fans that wanted to ask Brian a question here.
Yeah, so we got a super chat from MP Houston. Thank you, MP. It says, B-Rob, do you still stay in touch with Rhett Bomar or no?
I don't know if I stay in touch with him as much as he stayed in touch with me. I think I still got some skin or something that's hanging off his jersey at his house or something like that. No, I mean it's funny. We actually he actually came to Minnesota for a short stint, and I introduced myself to him, and he was like, "Yeah, I know who you are," and and so I found that kind of funny. But no, I actually haven't talked to Rhett in years.
Yeah, by the way, for those that don't know, he's the offensive coordinator at Conroe High and has been for a few years.
Good stuff.
He's right up the road from me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he really is. He really is. Hey, Brian,
let's reenact that play like on Friday or something.
Here's a dad joke. I should hit him up sometime.
Yeah, that's good stuff. All right, Brian, thank you so much for joining us. I know you'll be with us on the post-game show this weekend. I can't wait to talk to you again then, see how the Longhorns did. Brian Robison, guys, thank you so much, Brian. You have a good week, man.
Thanks, guys. Hook 'em.
All right, have a good one. Hook 'em. Take care. Yeah, that's good stuff, man. Good stuff. You love hearing about from my standpoint, you love hearing a guy that still speaks with passion about the game like he does, because he cares about this rivalry, he cares about football. But I really liked him talking about the disciplined nature of the Texas defense, because I've noticed that like they didn't let Colorado State get out of the pocket, Jerry. Going back to that first game where they shut them out, they didn't really. The only time they let Michigan scored really is when they let their quarterback get out of the pocket. Remember that?
Yeah.
So maybe Texas is learning, and whether it's Pete Kwiatkowski, Johnny Nansen, whomever, that you gotta do that. You gotta do that.
We don't bring up the question, but Matt Hanley said Bomar's not at Conroe anymore, and the reason why I had not heard that. So thank you for that. I knew he was last year.
All right, we got a couple of super chats I'm going to read real quick. Sugar Daddy, thank you. He says those Goodrs are slimming. Jerry?
The only reason I have them on, I need slimming things in my life.
And then Jerry's Jack Link says all the white meat is gone. There's nothing but necks on the platter. Oh, goodness. And going back to your slimming Goodrs, Jerry, I'm going to let you tell everybody out there about Goodr.
Well, I can do that. When you're ranked number one, the Goodr reader is very easy and very smooth. Let's hope. Why Goodr is the question. More than because Texas is ranked number one, and they have them in all colors and shapes and sizes. Stylish sunnies starting only $25 a pair. No slip, no bounce, all polarized, definitely all fun, especially when you're ranked number one. 1-year warranty, don't need it. 30-day free returns, they have to say it to cover their bases, but you don't need that either. There's 3 new high-performance styles. We're going to start with the Astro G. Let's get that one out of the way. Sun shield glasses that prove the sky isn't the limit. Nothing is the limit. Epic is a lifestyle. Fully adjustable nose piece. No simple temple grips. Anti-fog coating. The Bolt G, which I think is a really cool looking shade if you haven't seen it. Sports shades with a ventilated wrap lens and no slip fit to keep you in the zone. Ventilated lenses for cool, clear vision. And then there's the Bug G. This is kind of your cycling one. If you like to cycle, runners, that sort of thing. Aerodynamic wraparound shades for next level performance. These buzzworthy active shades have trendy oval shaped lenses and compact with high performance features. Aerodynamic dual lens frames. And by the way, Goodr, I'll make my read in those if you send them to me. If you want to support the show and try a pair, Goodr is giving On Texas Football all caps free shipping. You can go to goodr.com/ontexas. Use that code ONTEXAS, all caps, for free shipping. Again, I have to say it. Goodr offers you a 30-day money-back guarantee. You don't need it. And 100% satisfaction should be 1,000. Again, that's goodr.com/ontexas, all caps, for free shipping. Hey, may as well do it. Rank number one. Go get your Goodrs.
And then after you get your Goodrs, be sure to check out HelloFresh, because with HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. You can skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. HelloFresh delivers all the pre-portioned ingredients you'll need to make easy homemade meals, all the proteins, all the veggies, the sauces, the spices, and more. Or they arrive in your box along with simple instructions that walk you through each step in the cooking process. It's easy. You can also choose meals that match you and your family's lifestyle. That's why I personally love it. They have something for everybody. Of course, I also love that it saves me time, because this time of year, well, I'm constantly on the go. And here's the best part. HelloFresh is hooking y'all up with free food. You can get 10 free meals at HelloFresh.com/freeontexas. Those meals will be applied across 7 boxes. It's for new subscribers only, and it varies by plan. That's 10 free HelloFresh meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/freeontexas. And that's HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. And moving on here, guys, we got a lot of questions, a lot of super chats. Jackson wants to know, he just got his tax return. Should he blow it on Texas versus A&M this year or next? He's leaning to next.
Look, I think that may be the hardest ticket you're going to find in a long time. if Texas and A&M both are top.
If the game
5,
has meaning.
Yeah, there's a chance that they're both top 5, top 10 teams. A&M wins out, which is not out of the question right now. I don't think it'll happen, but if they do, and Texas is say 10-1 or even 11-0 at that stage, there will not be a bigger ticket in the history of this state. Just telling you.
It's crazy. We kind of talked about it in scenarios before the season at the time, but it's crazy how much meaning could be actually in this first game with the rivalry returning. Let's just say, for instance, A&M's 9-2 going into the game. Say, for instance, Texas is 10-1. Texas is in the playoffs, win or lose. But if A&M beats Texas, they're in the playoffs too. Yeah. I mean, just imagine that scenario playing out.
I agree. I couldn't agree more.
And it could.
Our next one comes from Mike. Thank you, Mike, as always. He says, good morning from chilly Hazleton, Pennsylvania. I want to see a Michigan effort from the offensive line this Saturday. And is Nick Anderson still expected to be out for Oklahoma?
Jerry, I'll let you handle the Michigan effort from the O-line. Nick Anderson is still expected to be out.
Yeah. He may be out for the year.
Yeah, I don't know what the official term is for him, but they are more focused on getting Deion Burks back for this game, who is their leading receiver so far this year, the transfer from Purdue. So we'll see what happens. But, Jerry, you want to take the O-line from Michigan efforts that you've been all over the offensive line this year?
Yeah, I think I totally agree. I had circled this year Michigan, Oklahoma, Georgia, and A&M games where the offensive line absolutely has to play at a very high level. So here we are, back-to-back games coming up, Oklahoma and then Georgia, because those are the defensive lines that can really give your offense issues if you don't have a great game up front. And a great game up front is also the penalties that put you behind the chains. It's the communication. It's all of that, more than giving up a sack on 2nd and 7, right? It's everything that goes into it. Also moving people in the run game. If Texas offensive line plays like they did against Michigan Saturday in the Cotton Bowl, Oklahoma's in trouble.
I hope so.
And
okay, yeah. Brian Robison said something we need to remember. Number 32 is R. Mason Thomas.
Yeah,
got 6.5 sacks. He's a little bit undersized, but he is a maniac off the edge.
Yep.
He has a motor that will go for days. He's quick. He's fast. He's relatively strong. Cam Williams and Kelvin Banks are going to need some help at times, in my opinion. At times.
And he's a typical Florida kid. He's from Cardinal Gibbons High, one of the power programs down in Lauderdale, that was ranked as a high 3-star, low 4-star because he was 6'1.5". And you know what? Some of the in-state schools kind of, we're not sure about him. We've seen this story play out before. You know what that kid has? He's got that.
Yeah. Determination, heart, whatever you want to call it. He rushes the passer like he cares.
Yeah.
He will be there. Like everybody wants to talk about Stutzman, who's a really good player. Their linebackers are really good. Kip Lewis is good. The best player right now on that defense, or Billy Bowman's really good. The best player on that defense is number 32. Brian Robison was right about that.
Yeah, I agree.
We'll switch gears to recruiting for a moment. V. Brown, thank you, V. Brown. Assuming we beat OU and Georgia, how many commitments do we gain? And are there any more silent commits?
There is. The key to that, like how many commitments do you gain? It's kind of a timing thing, though. I mean, three guys could tell the Texas staff they're coming, which turn into a high post. But I think, look, if Texas wins the next 2 games, I mean, they have an avalanche of recruiting momentum. Because I just posted an updated Georgia visitors list on ontexasfootball.com. We don't have time to go through it all here, but it's getting bigger and bigger by the day, and will continue to do so. Travel permitted. The one issue in that game for out-of-state kids, it's not many hotel rooms around Austin because it's F1 weekend, and the prices are ridiculous on hotels. And so there's been a couple of families that are talking about flying into San Antonio, staying in San Antonio, and just driving up. So a little less than ideal, but that visitors list is going to be pretty extensive. By the way, Blake, it's time to play Jonah Williams had a big game.
Yes.
Friday night, I happened to be there. A few other important guys were there. This is against Port Arthur Memorial. Jonah had a 95-yard touchdown, the kickoff return for a touchdown. He had another touchdown catch. He had 2 tackles to start the game. He had this interception with the Texas gloves on. And, oh, look at him pointing at Steve Sarkisian and Blake Gideon. Look at Sark laughing.
Who's
Hey,
that guy?
I thought he was
Who's
pointing
that
at you there, Jerry. You sure?
Well, I mean, maybe he might have said, "Who's that ugly guy?" But the guy to the right of Sark, that was Jermaine from Anderson from Texas City. It was part of the Texas City 3 at the time.
Four.
The DC Texas City 4, who's now with Tyrone Jones, Irvis Hill, and Everett Rawls. There he is. He's the DC at Texas City now. And we had great conversations during this game. By the way, I want to announce this. Irvis Hill's son, for those that remember Irvis from the Texas City 4, is the number 1 or 2 ranked freshman point guard in America. He's going to be over at Clear Springs, and he's a big Texas fan. So some of the kids are starting to pop up that are really good athletes. But Sark, Blake Gideon were there. Sark left that game at halftime and flew in the helicopter up to Planet Ford Stadium in Spring to watch the second half of Decaney and Westfield, see Nick Townsend. But Jonah Williams put on a show in 3 quarters before they kind of shut it down a little bit. Jonah Williams had his biggest game at the biggest time. Packed house, sold out crowd, Texas coaches there. Couldn't have done it better.
He was pointing. I'm convinced he was pointing at you, not at Sark.
Probably over rankings.
Yeah.
It's what most kids point at me about after they make a play.
I love it.
Man.
I love it.
Hey,
I would say Jerry put up a note also about all those guys. There are really too many to list on a program like this. Go to ontexasfootball.com. Jerry put up a list of the guys expected, some of the higher name guys expected at the Georgia game. It is, I mean, what is it already? 15 to 20, like true blue chip type guys.
Yeah, at least. Yep, it is.
Yeah.
It is. And it'll keep getting bigger. Now, all those kids, obviously this is game day. It's all of them won't make it. Something happens somewhere, a kid gets injured on a Friday night, something happens for the travel with the family. It's inevitable. It's any games across the country that are big games like this, but Texas is going to have a monster visitor list for that game.
Hey, speaking of visitors, and I know you talked about this Friday, Jerry, but King, me, and a few others have asked, has Lance Jackson's visit to Arkansas changed anything?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think, look, he's going to be he'll be at Arkansas, Texas as a guest of Arkansas. I mean, he's going to be up there to watch his brother Landon play. And if I was him, I'd go as a recruit to those games. We've had guys committed to Texas that have done that in the past, guys committed elsewhere that have come to Texas as a guest of Texas. They didn't end up at Texas because they had a family member playing sports at the University of Texas. So I don't think so at this point in time.
I want to say this. Look, Landon Jackson played a whale of a game for Arkansas. If Texas is getting Landon Jackson or a better version of Landon Jackson, that person's going to end up being an All-American.
Yeah.
Because Landon Jackson plays that game with a lot of effort.
Yeah.
Forget about his height and weight and ability. He is a high effort guy. Lance Jackson has a brother he should be proud of.
And by the way, Landon Jackson deserves some credit, and we'll talk about it more as we get closer to the Arkansas game. But he was a highly ranked guy who developed later. He had to your point, Bobby, that stick-to-itiveness, that motor, that want to be really good. It didn't start off great for him necessarily at LSU. It didn't start off the way people thought it would. It took him a little longer to get to the player he is now, who's a projected mid to late first round pick. So that's just for all the parents and kids that listen to this show, man. Some of those guys, it takes a little longer. It's not add water instant players. Will Muschamp used to say on the recruiting trail when he was at Texas, and not add water instant player. Some of these guys are on different developmental paths. Lance Jackson got it. He was a little tight in his hips coming out of high school. They loosened him up, made him a better athlete, more of a better agility athlete. And then the rest is developed for him, but it took him longer to get there. But what he always had was he had this and he had this. So that's just something for the kids and parents out there. It's not all these guys just aren't on the same timeline. And yet here he is. He's about to be a first-round pick if he stays healthy.
And one other question, living rent-free in UT, going back to Jonah Williams. Do you think he can be a day one starter?
I don't think so, because I got a little update on that Friday. So as of right now, he's going in the spring, and he's going to play baseball at Texas. And I don't think and this can change. This is October 7th, but right now his plan is to play baseball in the spring and maybe more sit in on team meetings, but not go through spring football. So can that change? Again, it's October 7th, but that's what I was kind of told Friday, is that play baseball in the spring, get acclimated to college, sit in on the meetings when he can for football, but not start football full till after baseball season. That alone, like Santana Wilson's doing really well at Texas, but he didn't go through spring practice. And I do think that's big as far as push. I think Jonah Williams will be on the field as a freshman. But the question was, could he be a day one starter? I don't see that without spring practice. I don't see him making it. And there's talented players there.
All right, guys, we got some more super chats here. And this next one from Sugar Daddy again. He says, Miami is the biggest fraud in the top 10.
Agree.
Now that Missouri's not in it anymore.
Man,
yeah. Miami's issue, Jerry's talked about it, is their defense. They're just not very good on defense. Cam Ward turns it over enough that they're going to get caught.
Yeah. Assuming they don't keep getting bailed out.
Yep. By the refs. Yeah. Good point.
Jeff Carey with the next one. He says, for the SEC season, I think we're vulnerable against power runners and our lack of power run game.
We talked about this last night with Rod Babers. Look, Sark likes to open it up early and throw the ball a lot, right, guys? That's his MO. What happens, though, he then likes to revert and be a power run team in the fourth quarter after he's got the defense a little bit on its heels. The question we had last night, can he do that against SEC teams? Or is he going to have to keep passing to move the ball in the fourth quarter? Because Texas, you can say what you want. I mean, Jarrett Gibson is not there yet. He's not, we talk about Arkansas. He's not a Jaquindon Jackson that's a grown man right now playing for Arkansas or any of these other guys. I feel like that is a fair question. I'll just put it that way. And we'll see how Sark does over these next 7 games. What is the MO that Texas creates or has to create in the second half to move the ball? Or do they just keep passing? If it's working, we'll see. At some point, though, Sark wants cheap yards and he wants to move the clock in the fourth quarter, especially if they're up.
And we have some super chats, guys, about other teams. So we're going to jump over to those. This one first from Juan. And he says, do you think that Kurt Cignetti will to Florida or maybe Arkansas?
Not Arkansas, but Florida could be possible, and it's Cignetti. I've got a crazy story about him, Jerry. When I first started in this business 30 plus years ago, maybe 25, maybe 5 years into it, he became the recruiting coordinator at Pitt. And I first started talking to him. I haven't talked to him in 10 years probably. But he's a good guy, hard-nosed. His dad was a long-term college coach in that area. So I wish him nothing but the best. He's gonna do well wherever he goes. He is currently the one at Indiana that's got the Hoosiers undefeated through 6 games for the first time in since World War II.
And then our next one, if I can find it here, my mouse will work with it. It's from Don Gregory. He says, good morning, fellas. Just want to say, Bobby, I thought last night was your best podcast ever. P.S. Blake, you do a great job in the morning. Well, thank you, Don. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Don. We appreciate it. We had a good time last night. It was fun. Waiting for the Cowboys game to come on, by the way.
Yeah, the delay.
The weather delay was a little longer than anticipated. I'm sure some people that are Longhorn fans here are lucky to get up this early in the morning on a Monday after watching that one.
Do most people think it would have been canceled now?
I mean, look, they came back and won. So it was you had to stay up to the very end, though, to get it figured out.
And then Lupe with the super chat. Thank you, Lupe. And they say, I listen to every single On Texas Football video at my job overnight, but rarely get to catch anything live. You guys are the best in the business. Hook 'em.
Hook 'em, Lupe. I hope you're saying that to us about Saturday afternoon around 6 p.m. That's if y'all are still with us at Saturday at 6 p.m., all is right with the world. That's about what time the Longhorns should be finished.
Hey, Jay Dobbs, didn't Jackson drop his UT commitment? Yeah, look, he talking about Jaquinda Jackson, the Arkansas running back. Yeah, he wanted to play quarterback. And I was at ESPN Under Armour at the time, and we had an event called Future 50 where he brought in 50 of the top juniors in the country, and he was one of those. And he would only work out at quarterback then as well. He was pretty headstrong, very headstrong on that at the time. Even though people around him were telling him, hey, man, just be open to playing linebacker, playing running back, just be open to it. As a young kid, a lot of kids are like that. He just wasn't open to that. That was going to be a process for him, and now he'll play in the NFL at running back.
And Jarrett says, do you think Wisner will overtake the running back one role over Blue? I thought he looked really good last week once he got going. Interesting question.
It was a good topic last night, too. The question I have, Jerry, I think Jaden Blue's had 4 fumbles in his career at Texas. He's probably had right at 120 touches. Yeah, in between 100 and 120 touches. That's too many. Yeah. I mean, you can't have a fumble once every 20 carries, 25 carries. You just can't. So the question I have is that going to keep him from being the every down back and make him the boutique back that say a Keelan Robinson type role? I don't think Texas has the depth in the backfield to do that. I think it's not going to be a RB1 or RB2. I think it's going to be a running back by committee. And I don't think you can afford to lose Blue over the fumbles. You got to get that right. He's got to get that right in his head.
Got to catch the football better too, because he's got better hands. He has tremendous hands, and it hasn't really shown up this year to the level. I think that's kind of where the Baxter injury is big, though. I mean, they've changed roles. Jaden Blue against ULM had 25 carries and 7 targets. That is almost 3 times what he has had in his career. So he has taken on much bigger role than Texas was planning headed into the season for him. That was going to be closer to more receptions, but a lot of runs as well, but nothing like that. That's what the injuries have forced. But I'm not even sure RB1, RB2 the start, if it really matters. To me, it's all about all 3 of those guys, Jarrett Gibson included, performing at a high level, period. And so I'm not really big into who's the starter and who's not in a rotation like that. I know it may matter to the players, but for me, it doesn't matter. It matters what these guys do. And one big piece for me with Jaden Blue is his really good hands need to show up the rest of the season for me.
That would be big, because you get him out there. The thing that's different between, like, Wisner, I think, may be a better running back, to y'all's point, than Blue. I don't necessarily disagree with that. 131 carries, 4 fumbles. That's too frequent. That's too frequent. Wisner may be a better running back, like in between the tackles and off tackle. The thing that Jaden Blue has that even Trey Wisner doesn't, even though I love Trey, is Jaden Blue has acceleration that is out of this world, like elite. And so Sark loves getting him out on the edge, because he knows, like the play against Michigan, Jerry, they threw that ball into zone coverage, yet he came at the corner so fast, the corner couldn't make up space. And he just dipped by him for an extra 15, 20 yards.
Yeah.
That's what Jaden Blue does that maybe Trey Wisner gets an extra 5 or 10 out of that. It's just a little bit of difference, but it's so elite that you have to get Blue the ball in space at least 3 to 4 times a game, or you're not doing your job as an offensive coordinator.
Hey, Derek Wisner says, Trey's mom and I need a 100-yard game from Trey versus OU to top off our birthday weekend. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Derek. Well, hey, I'll take that. If Texas has a 100-yard rusher in this game, Texas wins. Period. That's not even going to be debatable if that happens.
Hey, question I'm going to hit on real quick because we've had a few about Jakeem Stewart, the defensive tackle from New Orleans, reclassed in the 25. And, I mean, look, that's a massive NIL recruitment. I'd be surprised based on where things have gone in the past.
And skip this one earlier. I didn't mean to. Just a dude. I apologize, but thank you for your super chat. And he says Boise State running back Ginty will break Barry Sanders' single season record.
I thought he might, but the problem is they're going to blow too many teams out. So that's going to hurt him. Like Saturday, Utah State's a pretty good team, and they had 49 points at half. I mean, to me, that's what's going to hurt him in terms of breaking that type of record and having that type of season. Maybe they get into some tighter games, but if you just look at their schedule right now, I mean, he had 192 against Oregon, right? He had over 200 against Washington State, 259. At Hawaii, I mean, at UNLV is going to be his Heisman moment game. At Hawaii, I mean, they're going to blow Hawaii out. At UNLV, that's his game. San Diego State at home, Nevada at home. I mean, they'll blow Nevada out. San Jose at Wyoming is not very good this year. Oregon State. I mean, that may hurt the 2,628 yards I think that Barry Sanders had right around there, that type of year, because they're going to have too many blowout games. But if he's going to win the Heisman at UNLV October 25th, if he puts up 250, 275 against Barry Odom and that team who's really good, he's going to easily jump to the Heisman favorite.
There also be this situation of whether or not he plays in the bowl game.
Yeah.
I mean, do you sit the bowl game? If
you know,
that probably not. You probably won't break Barry's record because of it.
Yeah, that's true. You know, he had a tweet the other day that I think somebody asked him about NIL and why he stayed. I wonder if he's the guy that play. Well, obviously, if they're in a playoff, he's playing, right? I mean,
yeah.
He pretty much said there's more to life than money. That'll come. I can't find the tweet, Blake. If we can find the tweet, it's actually really good. I can't remember. I don't want to say what it was because word for word I won't be correct, but you guys can look it up on why he stayed at Boise, and it kind of I think speaks to who he is a little bit because he had a lot of big offers to leave.
I will look for that. Well, I'll read y'all. Oh, what you got?
With the outcomes of this past weekend, Alabama going down to Vanderbilt, Tennessee going down to Arkansas. Because that's the other game that weekend is Tennessee, Alabama. Will Texas, Georgia get flexed to that primetime slot? If Texas and Georgia win this weekend, the answer is yes. If Texas beats OU and remains undefeated, Texas will play Georgia in the primetime slot. Almost guarantee for that. Almost guarantee that game day is in Austin. You know, I know that you don't want to put too much on. There doesn't need to be any ulterior motives for Texas OU. But, yeah, that kind of stuff is riding on the outcome of the Texas OU game. Texas will be national primetime against Georgia. No doubt in my mind if that happens.
And there's this.
They are.
The other piece that has Mississippi State's at Georgia, so you know what's going to happen in that one. That's just going to be a physically dominated game by Georgia. But then there's going to be Ohio State and Oregon. Somebody's going to lose. So Georgia's going to move up as well in the polls, at least one spot, because somebody's going to lose that game. So as long as Georgia handles their business, they're going up a spot in the poll, and it's going to create a top 5 matchup if Texas wins, a 1 versus 4. Victor Aldridge, any news on Michael Terry? I think Texas is still a big favorite there.
This one from David Keith Williams that I really liked a lot. I was looking at the national team offense and defense stats. As surprising as it is, UT is ranked 7th in offense and 3rd in defense. OU is ranked 121st in offense and 42nd in defense. I'll just say this. Texas has not faced any good offenses yet.
Yep.
Like Missouri was top 10 in the country in defense through its first 4 games or 5 games and got boat raced by the Aggies. We haven't gotten into the part of the schedule where you're going to get a true sense of what this Texas defense looks like. I'm not saying they're as susceptible as Missouri. Don't get me wrong. But I would bet Texas ends the season as a top 10 to 15 offense, even though they're playing in the SEC. I would not think they're going to end in the top 10 in defense. That would be my guess. So, and OU's ranking on offense is legitimate. They've just turned the ball over too much.
No.
Hopefully, they are hoping that Michael Hawkins solves that for them because he has not been careless with the ball.
All right, y'all. Our next one here comes from Dante. Thank you, Dante. I hope Sark's first couple of drives are unpredictable. My blood pressure can't handle Ewers throwing another pick on the first freaking drive.
Yeah, I talked about that a little bit in this morning's article on Texas football. Sark does a good job with early game play calls. We've seen that historically, right? His teams like to get out to an early lead. Venables does a good job of that for his defense too. He likes to get out to a good jump on defense because he wants to make the opposing coach counterpunch earlier and go into their bag earlier so he can see more of what he needs to adjust to in the second half. He likes, that is why I said it's a little bit of a referendum on the two. It absolutely is, even though I think Texas has more talent on offense than OU. It's a little bit of a referendum between those two coaches and their coaching styles.
By the way, I didn't bring it up, but had a question about Dorian Brew and Sark's visit there Friday. I do, from Matt Hanley, I do think NIL is a very big deal there. I also think that of Brew, Sanchez, in Austin, they may feel like they're better chances Brew right now, and I'm not saying that's a huge chance. One of these guys, the Georgia game is going to be big for recruiting. Obviously, the names that are on the visitors list, but who's going to actually show up that Texas is really trying to make enough of a run with where a flip becomes a realistic possibility, and it's not just something we talk about because there's contact and Sark stopped by the school. That they're the big hurdle is these guys getting on campus. Texas knows that, and that's kind of what they're trying to push for some of these guys. So we'll see who shows up. And it doesn't have to be October 19th because there's so much pressure on these kids committed elsewhere. It could be in November. It could be a practice when nobody's around. But that is they want those guys there for a game day visit if possible. That's for sure. Because a lot of things have – here's the crazy thing. If you look at a kid like a Devin Sanchez's recruitment, the last time he was on campus, Texas wasn't the very good football team. A lot of things have changed since then. The fan base has changed since then. Bevo Boulevard's changed since then. The facilities have changed since then. Just everything. And when I say the fan base, the expectations, the energy around the program, it's all changed so much. That's the fight. Ohio State's sitting there fighting, fighting him going on a visit. Texas is fighting him to get him to campus. Because both those schools know if you can get the guy to campus, then these recruitments become real, and then there's a real battle. If that doesn't happen, it's just stuff we're talking about.
All right, before we get to our last couple of questions, Bobby, will you let everyone know about Longhorn Wealth Management Group?
Absolutely. John Donovan is the president of Longhorn Wealth Management. We want to he wants to wish everybody a good week ahead. As a proud UT alum, John served 15 years as a Dallas, Texas Exes board member, and he encourages everyone going to the game this Saturday to attend the Dallas, Texas Exes tailgate they are hosting. John has earned the 5-star wealth manager designation by 5-star professionals, and he wants to offer that expertise to all of you in a free 90-minute private consultation to help you explore how you can best able to be enhance your own financial future. So either call John and the Longhorn Wealth Team at 972-707-4900 or go online, www.longhornwealth.net, to schedule your free private consultation today. John says hook them to the #1 Texas Longhorns.
Thank you, Bobby. And as I said, we got time for just a couple more questions, guys. So we're going to take this one from Edward. He says, do you see Sark taking his foot off the gas if we get up a couple touchdowns like we saw in previous games?
He better not. He better not, because Michael Hawkins is a big play waiting to happen. And all you'll need, if you're only up by 2 scores, all you'll need is one big play from Oklahoma. This is what happened against Auburn. Auburn, I don't know that they took their foot off the gas, but Auburn was down by 2 scores. They go, and Oklahoma had looked bad on offense for 3 quarters. They get a big pass down the field and score to bring it to a 1-score game. And then the next series, Auburn thinks they got it. They all of a sudden now got to start throwing the football. And guess what happens? There's a pick 6, and Auburn wins that game, or Oklahoma wins that game. You cannot take your foot off of the pedal against OU, because they have 3. If they're up by 3 scores, that's different. 2 scores, do not take your foot off the gas, period.
So a lot of people are asking about Auburn and defensive line guys. Look, Auburn is all in recruiting. That's easier said than done with those guys. Like, I think Jordan Crawford is as good a D lineman as there is in the country in this class. I mean, people are trying, but Malik Autry, same way. And I'm not saying those guys don't show up on campuses. We live in the NIL world, but be tough. I mean, look, Auburn's losing and just got a quarterback commitment flip from Notre Dame.
Hey, Jerry, let's have one final question from Colton Martinez for this morning, because I think it's a fair one. Colton's asking whether or not we should really, truly expect Quinn to be back in line. And basically, he asked here, are we overconfident that Quinn will snap right back to himself at kickoff in Dallas? He's done it before 2 years ago. And I think that leads to some confidence. But the question is, are we overconfident on that? It'll be a month since he's played his last football. Is Texas overconfident there, Jerry, in your opinion?
Not if their offensive line protects.
That's fair. I agree with that.
I mean, look, if you start getting pressure and you start getting hits on him early, then that affects a lot of quarterbacks. If Texas offensive line is strong on the first couple of series of the game, I think Quinn's going to get in a nice rhythm. I mean, I don't like putting it on one position, but that's us talking about this. But if the Texas offensive line plays at a high level Saturday and negates Oklahoma's strength of their team, not defense, team, Texas is going to have guys running wide open. Not wide open. They're going to have guys open, though, because they have too much speed. You can't cover all that speed if your offensive line negates Oklahoma's strength. I think there's always the game within the game, but then there's the view of how simple it can be. I think that's pretty simple for the Texas offense versus the defense before you get into routes and depth of routes and guys not messing up routes and everything else like that. If Texas offensive line plays at a really high level, then Oklahoma's strength of their team is negated.
Let's see, Jerry, how the pass protection is with Jake Majors, DJ Campbell, and Cam Williams going from center to right tackle. I'm sure that's where OU has got circled.
Yeah.
Less experience on that side, delayed linebacker blitz type stuff where they get them to overcommit one way or the other. DJ Campbell's going to get tested. No doubt in my mind, Cam Williams is going to get tested.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football, presented by John Donovan and Longhorn Wealth Management Group. We want to thank them, along with Goodr and HelloFresh, all for sponsoring today's show. Hey, if you've been watching us, you also should head on over to ontexasfootball.com, become an OTF OG using promo code OTF OG. That'll get you a full year for just $39.95. A ton of news over there constantly around the clock. Bobby, Jerry, CJ all have you covered on the football front. And then once you do that, you need to get some OTF gear. And Jerry, I'm going to let you tell everybody about this OTF gear.
Well, I don't have the hat on, but when I'm rolling around Dallas, going to schools this week, and in the State Fair Saturday, and at the Texas X's event Friday morning, I will have the Goodrs on and that gray on Texas football cap on. And I want to see a lot of those if possible. Bobby Burton will autograph them. Or, hey, by the way, challenge for the chat. For every On Texas football hat sold, Colt Monroe put in $1.99 super chat.
Oh my God, Jerry. You're insufferable. You're insufferable.
You won't.
You're insufferable. Hey, look, big week ahead for the Longhorns before we close out here. Clearly, Texas OU, biggest game of the year thus far, even bigger than Texas Michigan, in my opinion. I am excited about this. Whether Texas is favored by 14 or whatever, I don't care. Always remember that this game is about heart, gut, determination. And I go back to something Brian Robison said early. Who can control their emotions, control turnovers, and not have foolish penalties. In other words, who is the more professional team while also having that heart, determination, and guts. That's why this game is so special. And
I've said it. Everything. I've said it. This game reminds me of an NCAA tournament game in basketball. And what's tough about the NCAA tournament games is the runs and what happens to the other opponent's execution when a team's hitting you with a run. That, to me, that speaks to everything Brian Robison talks about. This is the closest thing to an NCAA tournament game that feels like it's win or go home for a fan base and a team as I've ever been around. And for that, places a different pressure on emotion and execution. Feels like an NCAA tournament game when you're there. It's wild stuff.
All right, guys. We will be back same time, same place tomorrow morning. Be sure to check out shop.ontexasfootball.com, and then, of course, ontexasfootball.com. Hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell so you're notified anytime we post content. And for Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you then.
Welcome. Have a good week, guys.